I stood at his doorstep, heart pounding like a drum I couldn't silence. My past stood just behind the door, ready to meet my present. I had sworn never to return to him, never to need him again. Yet here I was, desperate, trembling, and holding on to hope I barely believed in. When the door creaked open and his familiar eyes met mine, he smirked, mocking the man I had built my life with. But the moment I spoke my husband's name, that mocking smile shattered, replaced by a silence heavy with fear. What was he hiding? You're watching the Untold Love, where hidden stories of the heart come alive. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. When I first met him, there was nothing extraordinary about the moment. No dazzling fireworks, no dramatic music. Just a quiet afternoon, sunlight falling through the window, and a man who smiled in a way that made the world pause. His smile wasn't charming in the polished, rehearsed way my ex used to smile. It was simple, honest. The kind of smile that made you feel seen, not as someone to impress, but as someone to cherish. He wasn't the kind of man who filled rooms with noise or stole attention with boldness. Instead, he carried himself with a gentle stillness, like the calm surface of a deep river. At first, I mistook that calm for weakness. But over time, I learned it was strength, the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but holds. Our love grew quietly, like roots beneath the earth. There were no grand gestures, no wild declarations. Instead, there were small moments, the way he listened when I spoke, as though every word mattered, the way he made tea for me in the mornings, even when he was rushing to work, the way his hand always searched for mine in crowded places, grounding me. I remember the day we decided to marry. There was no proposal on one knee, no glittering diamond ring. He simply said, "Life is uncertain. But if I walk it with you, I won't be afraid." Those words meant more to me than any jewel ever could. Because behind their simplicity, I felt a promise of loyalty, of companionship, of a love that would endure storms. Our wedding was modest. No gold-drenched hall, no lavish displays. Just close friends, family, and vows spoken with trembling voices. And yet, in that modesty, I felt a richness greater than anything wealth could offer. I felt safe. I felt chosen. I felt home. For years, our life together was not dramatic. It was steady, soft, almost ordinary. But within that ordinariness, I found a rare beauty. I would watch him sit at the table, his brow furrowed in thought, and wonder what burdens he carried silently. Because there was always a mystery in him, something about his past he never spoke of. Sometimes, in the quiet of the night, I would wake to see him staring into the dark, as though remembering a life I wasn't part of. But I didn't push. I thought love meant patience, trust, and letting silence speak where words could not. And so, I built my world around him, my gentle, steady husband, who seemed almost too fragile for the storms of life. What I didn't know then was that life was about to test us in ways I never imagined. Life has a way of testing the promises we make to ourselves. For years, I had vowed never to look back, never to reopen the door to the past I had walked away from. But sometimes, desperation makes you cross lines you once swore you'd never touch. It began with small cracks. Business partners we trusted suddenly turned their backs. Friends who once raised their glasses at our table disappeared when we needed them most. Bills piled higher than we could manage, and every door I knocked on closed with a polite but firm refusal. Banks demanded guarantees we didn't have, and the weight of our struggles pressed heavily against my chest every night. I tried to be strong for my husband. He, in his quiet way, never complained. He would reassure me with gentle words, telling me we would find a way. But I could see the worry in his eyes, hidden beneath his calm smile. And that worried me even more. Because for the first time, I saw the cracks in his strength, the shadows that sleepless nights had etched on his face. I searched for solutions everywhere, yet all paths seemed blocked. And then, like a cruel whisper from fate, one name surfaced. In my mind, his name. My ex. Even thinking of him made me uneasy. He was the kind of man who thrived on control, on making others feel small so he could stand taller. In the past, I had walked away from him, choosing my quiet, steady husband over his arrogance. I thought I had left that chapter behind for good. But now, in the silence of our emptying home, I realized he was the only one with the power to help us. The thought made me sick with shame. How could I face him again? How could I ask him for anything, knowing the bitterness he still carried in his heart? But when I looked at my husband, his tired shoulders, his unspoken worries, I knew my pride was worth nothing compared to protecting him. So I decided I would go. Not for myself. Not because I wanted to. But because sometimes love demands sacrifices we never imagined making. As I prepared to step back into that part of my life, memories returned, the coldness of his eyes, the sharpness of his words, the suffocating way he had once tried to own me. My heart pounded, torn between fear and resolve. And yet, despite everything, I gathered the strength to face him again. Because love, when true, makes us braver than we believe. What I didn't know was that walking back into his world would not only test my loyalty, but uncover secrets about my husband that I was never meant to know. His house stood like a fortress, tall gates, polished marble, and cold silence wrapped around its walls. As I walked toward the door, each step echoed like a warning. My palms were damp, my chest tight, yet I forced myself forward. This was not about me anymore. This was about saving the man I loved. When the door finally opened, I was met with the same eyes I once knew so well, sharp, calculating, always searching for a weakness to exploit. He hadn't changed. If anything, time had only deepened the arrogance in his gaze. Well, he said, his lips curling into a mocking smile. I never thought you'd come back. Desperate times, I suppose? His words cut, but I swallowed my pride. I didn't come here for myself, I replied softly. But he didn't listen. He leaned back, enjoying his power over me. So, how is your husband? His tone dripped with disdain. The man you chose over me. Tell me, has he finally proven what I always said? That he is weak. Useless. A nobody compared to me? The cruelty in his voice made my hands tremble, but not from fear. From anger. For years, I had stayed silent, thinking my ex's words no longer had the power to wound me. But hearing him mock the man who had given me nothing but love, it ignited a fire in me. I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze. He may not be like you, I said firmly. But that's exactly why I chose him. He doesn't need to trample others to feel strong. He doesn't need arrogance to prove his worth. He is more of a man than you'll ever be. For the first time, I saw his smirk falter, just slightly. But then he chuckled, shaking his head as if amused by my defiance. Still defending him, after all this time. How touching. But tell me, what could he possibly offer you now? You wouldn't be here if he hadn't already failed you. His words stung, because in a way, they carried truth. I was there because my husband and I had reached a breaking point. But what my ex didn't understand was that I wasn't there out of regret. I was there out of love. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. You don't understand, I whispered, leaning forward. I didn't come here for money. I came here because something far bigger is at stake. And it involves him. His eyes narrowed. I could sense his curiosity now, pushing through his arrogance. And in that moment, I knew the game was about to change. His smug expression lingered, but I could see the curiosity behind his eyes now. He wanted to know why I had come. And so, with a steady voice, I told him. I didn't come here to beg for money, I began. I came here to warn you. There's a trap being set, and it involves my husband. At first, he laughed, sharp, cruel, dismissive. A trap? Please. Don't make me laugh. No one would bother wasting their time on a man like him. But I didn't flinch. I met his eyes and, with deliberate clarity, I spoke my husband's full name. The effect was immediate. His laughter died mid-breath. The color drained from his face as though I had struck him. His hand, resting casually on the arm of his chair, trembled almost imperceptibly. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "You know his name, don't you?" For a moment, silence swallowed the room. His confident air, the arrogance that once seemed untouchable, it all cracked like fragile glass. He tried to speak, but his voice faltered. That can't be." The man who had always prided himself on power now looked small, cornered by nothing more than a name. And in that moment, I realized there was something about my husband that I had never understood. Something he had hidden from me all these years. I pressed on, my voice trembling but firm. "Why are you afraid of him? What did he do to you?" He shifted in his seat, eyes darting away, as though the walls themselves might be listening. His arrogance had evaporated, leaving behind only fear and a shadow of guilt. Finally, he whispered, "You don't know, do you?" The words chilled me. "No what?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He exhaled, long and shaky, running a hand over his face. For the first time since I had known him, he looked human, vulnerable, even broken. "Your husband, he isn't who you think he is. He isn't just some quiet man living a simple life. His name carries a weight you couldn't possibly imagine." My pulse quickened. Questions tumbled in my mind, colliding into each other. What past had my husband buried? What truth had he locked away behind those calm eyes and sleepless nights? And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, my ex said, "The last time I crossed paths with him, it nearly destroyed me." His words left me frozen. Suddenly, the man I thought I knew best, the gentle husband who brewed my morning tea, seemed like a stranger with a shadowed past. And I realized, my journey into the past had only just begun. His words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. "The last time I crossed paths with him, it nearly destroyed me." I stared at him, unable to breathe, my heart pounding louder than the silence that followed. This was not the man I once knew. My ex, so arrogant, so untouchable, was now trembling like a shadow of himself. And all because of my husband's name. Finally, he spoke again, his voice low, almost reluctant. "You see him as gentle, ordinary. But there was a time when your husband wasn't living a quiet life. He was feared." My body stiffened. "Feared? What do you mean?" He leaned back, his hands clasping together as though he was trying to hold his own nerves in place. "Years ago, there was a storm in the business world. Powerful men lost everything overnight. Deals collapsed, empires burned. And at the center of it all was a man, your husband. He never boasted, never threatened. He simply acted. Quiet, precise, ruthless when needed. He didn't build power with noise, but with silence. And silence is far more dangerous." His words shook me. I remembered the nights when I'd wake to find my husband staring into the dark, his face unreadable. The times he'd avoided questions about his past, brushing them aside with a gentle smile. And now, the puzzle pieces began to fit in ways I never expected. My ex swallowed hard. His arrogance replaced by something I'd never seen in him before, respect. "I tried to outsmart him once," he confessed bitterly. "I thought I could ruin him, the way I ruined others. But he didn't fight like the rest. He dismantled me quietly, leaving me to fall apart without ever lifting a finger in public. That's why I hate him. That's why I envy him. Because no matter what I did, I could never match his strength." His voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, I pitied him. I whispered, more to myself than to him, "All these years, he never told me." My ex's eyes softened with a strange mix of regret and warning. "Of course he didn't. Men like him don't carry their past into their homes. They bury it, to protect the ones they love." Tears pricked my eyes. I thought I had known my husband's every layer, every secret of his heart. But now I realized there were depths within him I had never touched. Depths he had kept hidden, not because he didn't trust me, but because he wanted to shield me from a world darker than I could imagine. And in that moment, my love for him grew heavier, not with doubt, but with awe. Because the man I had thought too fragile for life's storms, had once been the storm itself. The room felt colder than before, though not because of the marble floors or the silent air. It was his words, the truth about my husband, that left a chill deep inside me. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My heart ached with the weight of revelations I hadn't asked for, but perhaps always feared. My ex leaned forward, regaining a trace of his arrogance. Now you see, he said slowly, your husband isn't the saint you imagine. He's a man who destroyed others, who built his peace on the ruin of lives like mine. Do you really think he deserves your loyalty? Something inside me snapped. I rose from my chair, my hands trembling but my voice steady. Enough. He blinked, startled by the firmness in my tone. Yes, he may have a past I don't fully know, I continued, but what matters is the man he is with me. The man who has never raised his voice in anger, who has carried his burdens in silence so I wouldn't have to. You call that weakness? I call it love. And I would choose that love 1,000 times over your pride. For a moment, his mask slipped again. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened. He leaned closer, his voice low and bitter. If you stay with him, you'll never escape his shadow. I could give you everything, wealth, security, power. Leave him, and I'll make sure you never know struggle again. The offer was poisoned honey, tempting in its glitter, but empty of soul. I looked him straight in the eyes. I didn't come here to trade love for comfort. I came here because I thought you could help. But I see now, help from you comes with chains. And I'd rather walk through fire with him than sit on a throne beside you. My words hung heavy between us, unshaken, unbending. For the first time, he had no reply. He searched my face, perhaps hoping to find doubt, but there was none. Only resolve. I turned to leave, my steps steady though my heart raced. Behind me, I heard him whisper, almost to himself, you'll regret this. I paused at the doorway. Not to look back, but to answer. No. The only regret I'd ever carry would be betraying the man who taught me what real love means. And with that, I walked away from the ghosts of my past, back toward the man who was my present, my future, my home. For the first time in days, the weight on my chest began to lift. Because love, when chosen without fear, becomes the strongest shield of all. That evening, when I returned home, my husband was waiting at the table, his hands folded quietly, as though he had been sitting there for hours. The moment I saw him, all the strength I had carried inside me melted into trembling relief. I walked toward him slowly, each step heavy with the weight of what I had learned. He looked up at me with those calm, familiar eyes, the eyes that had once seemed so ordinary, but now, I knew, carried storms they would never confess. He smiled, soft and gentle, as if to say, you don't need to ask. I'm still the same man. I sat beside him, my hands reaching for his. For a long time, I said nothing. I just let the warmth of his touch remind me of the truth I had almost forgotten, that no matter what shadows haunted his past, his love for me had always been steady, always real. Finally, I whispered, I met him today. His smile didn't fade, but I felt his hand stiffen slightly beneath mine. He didn't ask what happened, didn't press me for details. Instead, he simply looked at me, his eyes searching mine, waiting for my choice. And in that silence, I realized something. He wasn't afraid of me knowing his past. He wasn't hiding out of shame. He was silent because love, to him, meant sparing me from burdens I never needed to carry. He had fought his battles, lived his storms, and then chosen to build a new life with me, a life of peace. Tears welled in my eyes as I squeezed his hand. I don't need to know, I said softly. Not if it hurts you. All I need to know is that you're here, with me. For the first time that night, his calm expression broke. His eyes glistened, and a rare emotion flickered across his face, something raw, unguarded, deeply human. He lifted my hand and pressed it to his lips, as if sealing a vow without words. And in that moment, I felt it, closure. Not from the past, but from the fear that had haunted me. Because love is not about knowing every detail of someone's story. Love is choosing them, even when shadows remain. I rested my head against his shoulder, and together we sat in the quiet, letting the night surround us. My ex had tried to shake me, to plant doubt, to make me question. Instead, he had only revealed the depth of my husband's strength, and the depth of my own devotion. For love, when it survives storms, does not just remain. It grows stronger, brighter, unshakable. And in that quiet night, I knew, I had chosen right. Forever.